Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. This is the first video that I've done in a while. Um, a while ago, I sort of set up a YouTube channel. I did an introductory video, but I haven't really had time to do much about it. But I think that the current environment is a good context to maybe revive that idea, to do some stuff. We'll see how far it goes. I'll talk about some of the stuff that I put on the blog, and both in terms of sort of general general interest, but also in terms of markets. So I'll try to keep those two things separate, because I know that people who might be interested in one thing might not be interested in the other. So but that's just the way it is. Also, I think that going forward, one way for me to try to structure these things would be to maybe talk about what other people do, because I consume a lot of content through the week in terms of other podcasts, other videos. I read a lot of stuff, and maybe it would be useful to frame some of these small bits that I intend to do on video around that, so that to give you an idea of what I'm thinking of, but also to give you some recommendations in terms of where to go, because there's so much content at the moment that I think maybe if there is any chance that I'm going to add any kind of value with these things, maybe that would be the way to do it. In any case, I think that I'll talk about a piece that I start by talking about a piece that I put on the blog recently, which I entitled "Raise the Bar," and that entry kind of picks up on some of the topics I discussed in my introductory video, which is on my YouTube channel at the moment, which is on my YouTube channel in the same way that this video is going to be on my YouTube channel. And it's very difficult to pin down exactly what it is that's going on at the moment, but it's not good. And if I was going to frame it in sort of one sentence, or in one sort of overarching idea, it would be that we have lost the ability to make sense of the world as one group. So what's going on at the moment, I think, is that you have an incredibly high degree of tribalism, which is not necessarily new, but the problem is not just that you have different factions competing over the narrative and ideas, but also that these factions have radically different views of the world, and they're not just in opposition to each other. I mean, I think that words like hate and disdain they're not hyperbole in terms of what's going on at the moment. Obviously, that creates an extremely unfriendly environment, and just a bad environment in general. And the way I describe it in that blog post is basically that I think there are two elements. One element is that there has been, I think, the last couple of years, there's this underlying tenor in a lot of discourses that the world is basically broken, and because the world is broken, we need sort of drastic change, and those change could come in the form of revolution, but it could also come in form of other kinds of change. But this idea that we have this idea that the world is wealthy and we're all doing quite okay, but really it's all going to hell. Now, I think I'm on record for, at least in writing, for rejecting that idea a lot. I mean, I've written a couple of pieces on this. I'll link to them below this video, but I don't think that's true. I mean, I think that, I wouldn't say that I'm sort of optimistic in the same way that someone like Pinker is, because I think that, he gets a lot of stuff wrong as well. But I think that we need to be very careful in terms of accepting this idea that it would be best if we just tore the whole thing down. But it follows from that, I think, to set up an interesting question about, let's say that there are things that need to change, that there are challenges that we, as let's just say humanity, face at the moment, and that requires attention. Right? Attention that is more urgent than they might have been, let's go 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Now, what would be the absolute base prerequisite for meeting such a challenge? Well, I would argue that in order for humanity to meet such a challenge would be that we should be able to sit in the same boat, as it were. We should be able to move in the same direction towards a common goal, and we should be able to sit down and discuss what that common goal is. And that doesn't mean we have to agree, but we should be able to have some kind of semblance of normal narrative and discourse to be able to come to a conclusion about what it is that we have to do next. And in order to do that, we need to have tools, right? We need to have a common understanding of what separates truth from untruth, truth from false, fiction from fact, and sense from nonsense. And we don't at the moment. I mean, it's clear that what people on one side thinks to be so egregiously wrong is accepted as the only way forward on the other side, and vice versa. And and it's almost as if, and this is a point I make in that post, is that the clearer it becomes that something is wrong, this is to say that there are actually challenges now that really need to be addressed, the more polarized the discourse becomes, and the further we stray away from having this common narrative about how to sort fact from fiction and truth from false and these other things. And I have to say that it does scare me a little bit. I mean, I live in a bubble. I mean, in the sense that it doesn't really affect my day-to-day life. I live quite comfortably, and I am grateful for that. Although, I mean, I also work hard for that, so it's not like it just is what it is. But I do look at the way we are talking about the world and trying to make sense of the world, and that does really, really frighten me sometimes, because we are really, really bad at it. Social media plays in. I mean, I think there's good argument to the idea that social media to some extent drives us mad. I know that someone like Sam Harris has made that point. And on that note, I mean, in that blog post, I also reference a podcast that Sam Harris recently did, in which he tries to discuss. Not tries, but he discusses the protest in the wake of the George Floyd killing, and just tries to frame the whole Black Lives Matter racism debate in a US context. And it is phenomenally good. I mean, everybody should go and listen to it. Not because you disagree with it or not, but because, like I say in the blog post, the way Sam discusses this, the approach that he uses to try to get to grips with this, that is what we have to aspire to. If we could do something like that, we could move forward, right? I mean, if everyone discussed these topics at the same level of complexity and I would say tolerance and just compassion, as Sam Harris does, oh my God, we would be in such a better place. So in some sense, it sets a high bar. This is why I called the piece, raise the bar. But it sets a high bar, and we should try to get up there and do that. And there are other people that I'd mention here. I think that what Brett Weinstein and his wife Heather Hine they've been doing in the context of not just the COVID-19 epidemic, but also what they've been doing in the context of the recent protests. They have had this podcast series which they started as the COVID-19 epidemic got underway, and they shifted the focus when the protests began, and so they're kind of like doing a dual they kind of like dual purposes now, but they do like 2 hours, 4 hours a week at the moment, which is phenomenal in its own right. So they have plenty of time to discuss both things. And I think that what they do is so. I mean, again, they just raised the bar. I mean, again, this is not really a question of disagreeing or not disagreeing. I mean, they invite you in and you listen. That what that is, listening to them speak in the current environment, and also someone like Sam Harris, is that's detox for your mind. And to the extent that I'm trying here to apply the same kind of like to apply the same kind of level of discourse to these debate to this debate, at least pointing to where I think we should go in order to find a level of discourse narrative that is of a suitably high quality to address the issue. They're just very, very good. I mean, I don't know. Some of the people who view this will know Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying, and they'll know their history in terms of what happened at Evergreen and their role in sort of the ubiquitous sort of the intellectual dark web, and they're part of that group. But I might have something more to say about that at some point. But at this point, I just think that you should go and have a look at it. It's difficult to go back in time and start listening to what they did earlier, because what they do is kind of like very sort of topical and in terms of relevant when it comes out. So all I can suggest is you just jump the train. Right after I posted my blog post, Brett did a 3-hour conversation with Joe Rogan. I mean, obviously Joe Rogan knows, he needs no introduction. I actually tend not to listen that much to Joe Rogan's podcast because I don't really have time. But when he has someone on like Brett that I care about his view, I listen to, and it's fantastic. You should go listen to it. It's a really good conversation. You'll get a very good sense of things at the moment. Of where things are at the moment, if you go listen to that, I think. And which then brings me to sort of the final bit of this, which is obviously where things get controversial, things get uncomfortable, and things might even get dangerous. Is that all the people I've just mentioned here, Sam Harris, Brett Weinstein, Heather Heying, and Joe Rogan, in the context of the dichotomy that's currently in play between two tribes, the mere fact that I've just recommended these people put me squarely in the anti-left, far right camp, right? I mean, you could even say that. I mean, I'm sure that there are people. There are people who still describe people like Sam Harris and Brett Weinstein as sort of far right Nazis, right? That's what they'll call them. And all I can say is they're wrong. Anyone who goes and actually listens to what these people are saying will know that they're wrong. And quite frankly, I think that those of us who like what they say, but have this idea that we have to kind of distance ourselves a little bit from them because we can't really be seen to kind of be associated with them. Look, we've got to be brave enough to stand up, right? Because it makes no sense, right? I mean, let's just have a proper conversation about these things. And let's, if we disagree with them, we should be able to say we disagree with them. But to say that, you shouldn't really listen to a Brett Weinstein podcast or Dark Horse, so what he's doing, the Dark Horse podcast, or Sam Harris, because, you just, you are associating yourself with a sort of a far right Nazi. I mean, come on. I mean, if we're not better than that, I don't know. I mean, and I'll have a point about that in a minute. Sorry, that was the dishwasher. Dang, well, it had to happen, I guess. But if we can't like move beyond that, I just don't know, right? I mean, I mean, if that is enough to get you quote unquote cancelled, I mean, what's the point, right? I mean, just keep your head down and just wait it out. No, come on. I mean, we need to have a proper discussion about this. Which someone like me, I'm actually the perfect example and yardstick for this issue, right? Because I'm sort of like a Northern European fluffy centrist, right? Which means that in a European context, I would probably be on the center right, a little bit sort of center right. In a US context, I'd be on the center left because the spectrums are sort of a little bit they're not completely aligned. And I'm sitting here, and I mean, there's a tweet the other day. I can't remember what it was from, but I think it had this very interesting. It set up this very interesting dichotomy, and the dichotomy goes something like: if you're a centrist, you only have two choices now, right? You can submit to the left or ally with conservatives and the right wing. Not necessarily right, but you ally with the conservatives. You submit to sort of the what we call the left, far left, or you go on the other side. There's no center anymore, and I feel that's true. I feel that's true because on the center, even if we have good ideas on the center, nobody's really listening to them. And when we go foraging on either side of the center in order to try to pick up good ideas, to try to synthesize what the right is saying and what the left is saying, because that is what the center does, right? The end product, which I wouldn't say it's close to status quo, but the end product has a tendency to at least suggest that the status quo is okay and can be improved, right? That it's possible to improve the status quo um, without necessarily tearing everything down. And in any case, shouldn't we be happy for the things that we have that actually work okay? That idea is just not worth anything at the moment. I mean, you can't even. It seems to me that it's not even a relevant political argument anymore in so far as goes that what actually drives the narrative, because the reality is that politicians, obviously they're constrained by the system such as it is, so it's not easy. My point is, not easy to do a revolution. I mean, there's inertia in the system, which I think perhaps is a good thing, but that's a discussion for a different day. But honest at the center at the moment, I do feel that you are being dragged into these two opposite positions, right? And where you fall on either side, it's not completely clear. I mean, it's not clear where you have to fall. I mean, because the decision of where you fall is depending on probably how bad you think either of the side is. And you know, for my part, I mean, given what I've said here, you can probably sense where I'm going. I mean, I fall to the right on the fence, right, on the conservative side at this point. I feel I'm being dragged to the right here. I felt that already in the UK when you had the election campaign between Jeremy Corbyn and the Conservatives, where I just felt like the we're going to come get you attitude of the left was so appalling and so disgusting that I just couldn't see myself supporting, even if I don't really like being dragged to the right. I mean, you know, because that's Trump, right? I mean, Trump's fucking buffoon. I mean, come on. I mean, nobody. I mean, I just don't. I mean, and I said that's not Trump, but in the U.S. context, for example, that would be Trump because there's only like there's two, right? And so you get to, I really don't. I'm not in a comfortable position here. I mean, one thing I would say though is that, and this is an indictment. This is my indictment to what is now ostensibly called the left, and what's going on. People tearing down statues and all this shit and all that. My indictment of them is that there's no redemption on that side. You can't have a discussion with any of them, as far as I can see, right? I mean, it's just not possible to have a nuanced debate. Whereas I have to say, at least on the other side, I feel that I can sit down and have a discussion on sort of normal merits and try to uh, convince that side of my arguments to the extent that I have anyone in that kind of context. Whereas on the other side, I mean, I just feel like there's nothing to be done. It's just anarchy. It's this very odd cancellation culture, which then percolates into the general discourse in the form of people and organizations and institutions making all kinds of convulsions in order to try to sort of push the mob at bay, right? You had this idea that the Green King, the pub chain, is now paying reparations or is donating money to Black Lives for the simple reason that somewhere down in the past, its owner had something to do with slavery. I mean, if we start judging each other on those metrics, right? We're all going. I guarantee you, like, no one will come out alive. I guarantee you. That's just and I finished. I'll finish this perspective with a point that I know Brett Weinstein has made many times, which I am warming to, which is basically that I know the mob is dangerous, and we should all, I'm not. Don't be a martyr, right? We shouldn't run straight into the bayonets, and we should try to toe the line, right? We should try to be honest, and we should try to be true to the idea that actually, it's probably trying to get people to work together instead of pulling people apart that makes us come out on the other side. But like, if you are not willing to stand up to some of these absolutely ludicrous positions that are being imposed on you, you are externalizing harm on others. I know Brett Ranson made that point. I think that's a really true point. And we've got to be like, we've got to be brave enough, guys. Like on us on the center, right? We've got to be, like, we've got to take a stand on here. And we've got to take a stand if on again, and by the way, we can do that at the same time as we reject ideas on the right that we don't like, right? Um, and and I and in all, and we have to do that because the metaphor that I'm getting at in order to finish this off, it comes from a piece I wrote a couple of weeks ago called "Off the Fence," which is basically this idea that it's all very good to be a centrist, but you kind of like you need to steal ideas from both sides, and then you need to try to synthesize this. This is what the center does, and at the moment the center is failing at that, either because we don't have ideas that are good enough, and or because even if we have good ideas, nobody listens to them. It's just the tribalism is just too strong. We can't punch through. Um, and and so I think that the metaphor. Let me just lost my train of thought there. But I think that the metaphor, yes, the metaphor I was getting at goes something like this, right? Because the spectrum is never not just a spectrum; it's really a circle. Right? So the spectrum I was getting at is something which ties which closes out um, um, with the theme that I started with, namely this idea that maybe the world is just going to hell in a hurry, and we need some drastic change. I mean, imagine you got. I'm just going to mention some people on both sides of the debate in the U.S. and the UK. Imagine you got Greta Thunberg, Steve Bannon, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rees-Mogg. Yeah, that should do. Those four, you put them in a cabin in the woods over the weekend, right, to hash out some ideas, right? And the way I describe it is that maybe we'll be lucky, right? I mean, maybe they just tear each other to bits, right? And nothing comes of it because they can't agree. But it's possible. It's possible that if you actually look at what these people are saying, so you're very sort of climate. Greta Thunberg is very climate. Um, focus on climate. This idea that basically the idea, if you take it to the extreme, this idea that there's too many. We're kind of like well, we're growing above our means. This idea that we're basically destroying our own home. Then you get someone like Steve Bannon, who's like outside enemy, very aggressive, almost nativist, but at least nationalist in a way that we haven't seen in a very long time. That type of idea. I mean, there's an off chance that a group like that would come out, emerge from a symposium with the idea that maybe the problem really is that instead of 10 billion people, which we're about to become over the next 20, 30 years, maybe it'd be better if there was only 5. Now, once we get to that point, guys, it's over, right? I mean, we just fight it out, right? We just meet on, I mean, I don't know. What do you want to meet? The Moor in Newcastle, the Hampstead Heath in London. Everybody has a machete or whatever, maybe an automatic weapon, and we just see who's left, right? But if we get to that point, we've already lost, right? I just feel that sometimes when the current extremes of the debate clash together, I just feel like at some point there's going to be a spark, and that idea is what's going to be left. And that again frightens me because at that point, there's no center anymore. The center's dead. At that point, there's two sides, and you got to choose in the end. I have to say, whether you choose one or the other, it's going to be bad either way. right? So, um, so yeah. So let's try not to end up there. Let's try to, stand up for the good debate, the honest debate, the good faith debate, tolerance, compassion. I dare even say love. Have faith that the person on the other side of the argument actually has something interesting to say, and try to, like I said, raise the bar. I mean, because if we don't do that, I just think we just descend into madness, and we're seeing signs of it now. And it doesn't. I'm not really. I don't really like what I'm seeing. Anyway, I think I'll end it there. I also put a post up over the weekend about what I think about what's going on in the markets. But I think it wouldn't be. I mean, I could segue to that now, but I won't. I just leave it there. Maybe the next video I'll talk a little bit about that, what I think about markets. There's also some podcasts I've been listening to, some content that I've been consuming, as it were, on that topic that I'd like to recommend to you. But I think I'll use that. I'll do that in a separate video. Um, so I'll end it there. That was 30 minutes. I'll try to keep these video at 30 minutes. I think that's just about as long as you can take just listening to me, if at all. So all I'll say now is, thanks for thanks for watching, and come find me on Twitter or send me an email if you think you need to get in touch. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.